Okay, we are live. Hi, this is William Ramsey. Welcome to William Ramsey Investigates. On today's show, I have a very special guest. He's been on my show a number of times. He's a researcher, great researcher, and kind of researches topics that are unique. So I'm glad to have him back. His name is Todd Wood. I've been on his show with was it Stan Walter Bosley, excuse me. So I've talked with him about Prophet of Evil and the smiley face killers phenomenon. And then Todd has come on to and the Doors. We just did a Doors and the Devil show that was very well received. But Todd has been on my show. We talked about the 4-Pi movement and William Joseph Bryan, and also I think I talked with them about the book, The Mystery of Ingersoll Lockwood. So we've done like 5 or 6 shows now. But today we're going to talk about something that's a bit controversial. And some people say it's not true. And that's known as the Hands of Death cult. And that is there something about these guys that really goes back to kind of the story of Otis Toole and Henry Lee Lucas, who's been discredited on so many of his so-called murders. But is there some connection? Is there really some underground kind of connection with some of these occultists and cultists? And I can tell for my own experience of this age in 2020, there's definitely a connection. Not that they're killers, but that the occultists are connected. But the real thing is, are these serial killers connected? And I'm showing right now this cover from Raising Hell, an encyclopedia of devil worship and satanic crime. They have a little section on the Hands of Death, and really based upon kind of Henry Lee Lucas and his stuff. And I think that Dave McGowan's written about that. But we're going to go into some names I really wasn't familiar with. I was reading through some material today from George of Capdef. I guess he's done a show with Jimmy Fallon Gong about Henry Lee Lucas, an in-depth one that I haven't listened to, but also the guy from Love Field and Love, or whatever, who does the whole program to kill video series, has covered some of the stuff with some of these strange connections. And some of these guys, the serial killers, have not acted alone. And we're going to talk more about that. So Todd Wood, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me back.
Cool. So maybe for people who don't know your show, Killafornia, maybe you can do a little bit of background, your interest, your research, and then lead into whole.
Yeah, I'm really interested in occult ritual murder, and I'm it's just something about putting the puzzle together, that I really enjoy. It kind of helps me relax a little after work. I work a lot, and I'm just a normal guy. I'm not a scholar, and I just like doing the research. I like discovering things. Before we get started, though, I want to give a shout out to Patrick from Lowfield in Love, the YouTube channel, and his website, programtokill.net. All of the 90% of the source material for this show comes from Lowfield in Love and programtokill.net, as well as CAFDEF.
I've had him on. There's one of my interviews is with him back in the day, like 4 or 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Great website, guys. If you're into this subject, those are the places to go to get the research material.
Gotcha. So I'll put a link to that as well. But some of these names are kind of obscure. I was reading through some of these guys, like you talk about McKenna. I've never heard him. Like, there's never been a show with me about him. Maybe Schaefer, not as much. I was kind of researching Schaefer, and Creech, I think was his name. He's a total hardcore satanic killer, but also associated with the Haight-Ashbury. I mean, really incredible stuff. But maybe you can kind of, Church of Satan. He met LaVey. So this whole notion that like occultism and serial killer doesn't influence stuff, this Lanning stuff is absurd, because the facts show themselves, right?
Right.
Can you talk about what the theory of the Hands of Death, the original thing, whether it's valid or not?
I personally, I can only speculate, and I can only give my opinion. Obviously, who knows for real? But I think it's real. I think it's a real deal. I think it's a situation where it's almost like a murder for hire cult. It's almost like Murder Incorporated. Like the 1970s and 1980s version of Murder Incorporated with an occult slant to it. Like the South American cartels, they play a big role in all this, obviously, in Florida and Texas and New Orleans, Louisiana, Shreveport. At least in my opinion. But I definitely think there's something to it. And it's kind of interesting. They're kind of like an alligator that kind of pokes its head above water for a second, and then it just goes right back down. Like you have no idea. If you're not quick, you'll miss it. You know what I'm saying, William?
I do know what you're saying, and I think it's because maybe other researchers don't want to go there. They want to see these serial killers as kind of lone wolves, and they don't have for their kind of greater connection.
Well, so the interesting thing though is you kind of have to separate serial killer from hitman, right? Because this cult was murder for hire stuff, and it just so happens that a lot of these guys just like killing, so they did their own killing, but they did the murder for hire stuff, such as Thomas Creech and Kenneth Mad Dog McKenna, who we're talking about tonight, and Henry Lee Lucas and Otis Toole, right?
They did commit murders. Yeah, they did commit for hire. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So it did. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Well, I'm just saying it's kind of confusing because you kind of put these serial killers in a box where they're like lust killers or sport killers, but they're also somebody saying, hey, you got to go kill this guy. Like Creech himself was a guy who was like, he had met somebody in the mob or something. And they're like, this guy burned me on a drug deal. You got to go get him. And he went and killed him, right?
Right. It's kind of the same with William Mincer, right? Who's associated with like the 4P cult, the Cotton Club murders. And like, later on, I'll probably be speculating that there may be a connection between William Mincer and the Hand of Death.
Right. I mean, it is incredible. And some of these cases, like they overlap. And like I was reading through George from CabDev stuff, and it's pretty clear that some of the cases according to him, and I looked at his research, the so-called cases of Bundy in Colorado he wasn't working alone, right?
Right. I mean, that's the theory. I mean, I think that he spells it out pretty good too. Like I think he wasn't working alone. I think he had help. In fact, in the book Only Living Witness, according to the author, or his interview with Ted Bundy, he claims that there's a network helping him. Right.
Right. At the very end of that book, right? And they didn't follow up on it either, right?
Right. Well, so the problem with that is the author made the assumption that he was just trying to get more time, right? He's about to be executed and all that. And that's just a stupid assumption. You shouldn't ever do that. Because what you think you know, you don't know. To quote the great Jim Mars.
Right.
One of the best researchers in the field. God bless his soul. He had passed away. But what you think you know, you don't know. Right?
Right. No, it's incredible. And like all this stuff about Ted is overlooked. The kind of supernatural element, his involvement in the cults in the Northwest. I mean, It's like they just whitewashed that or just ignored it. Like it's not important to those kind of researchers, right? Like I found that too in other stories. West Memphis 3 too. Like they just overlook just massive amount of obvious facts that are on the table. Like it's incredible.
I think it scares them.
I think so too.
And it's something that we as humans, we fear what we don't understand, and like they just don't understand it, so they can't comprehend it a lot of times, like the normal person.
Right. These people are very different. These kind of serial killers, their mindscapes and what they like. I was researching Schaefer today. We were kind of talking in the pre-show about Sandra London. Like I was talking to her trying to get her to talk about this because she actually growing up knew Schaefer when she was 18, and they wrote this crazy book together. But what was I going to say about Schaefer? Schaefer was, he thought he had this almost like the BTK killer, like his worldview and really fantasizing about women out on like trees and like it was bizarre.
Well, I think you're right. I think he talked too much and he made claims. And although he had enemies, right? Although he had enemies in the with the guards and law enforcement and the fellow prisoners, right? There's a lot of people who wanted him killed. In my opinion, that his murder, and I'm just speculating. I'm on the branch of speculation here. His murder was a hand of death murder. I think he volunteered Kenneth Mad Dog McKenna. Like, because the interesting thing is the correlation between the letter that arrives at Sandra London's publisher and his death. Like, Schaefer dies like 3 days before the letter arrives, I think. So no, he dies 2 days because Schaefer dies on December 3rd. The letter arrives on December 5th. And in that letter, he's basically volunteering Kenneth Mad Dog McKenna. And just like every other human being on this planet, no one likes being volunteered for anything, I don't think. It's just how you deal with it. Some people may murder to some other people. Of course, that's just speculation on my part. I have no idea.
Well, it is interesting that even in the instance of Schaefer, who died a really brutal death, he deserved it because he died. We don't even know how many people he killed. He may have killed like his next door neighbor when he was younger, but he was killed by a guy. They said his name was Rivera.
Right, but the thing about that though is that handprint, that pristine bloody handprint, the prints didn't match.
It didn't match to Rivera, right?
No, he went out of his way to write Sandra London to say that the prints didn't match. Right? And remember what we just said about the hand of death being murder for hire? You could just simply hire. You can hire Ottis Toole. The family blamed Ottis Toole.
Wow. Who was in jail with Schaefer at the same time. So you see this on you can
Mad Dog McKenna.
With Mad Dog McKenna, who knew Bundy. So these guys all know. You can listen to Schaefer online. He talks about himself. He exposes so much about his mentality through his fiction. It's called Killer Fiction is the book. And Sandra London wrote the intro. But he's very aware, almost like a kind of true crime junkie of the other serial killers. He talks about them. He knows where they are. He knows what they've done. Totally denying all of his murders too.
Well, you know what? It's funny. It's almost like he's an obsessed fan.
Yeah, no,
you know, it's like he doesn't have very many friends, or he doesn't have any friends. Thus, the only people he can relate to are the other killers who actually don't really like him very much either.
Right. Good point. But the guy who supposedly killed Schaefer, his name was Rivera, and they said that somebody like other doctor did a psych analysis on this guy Rivera and said that he was the top candidate for being a murderer of anybody that he had ever interviewed. Like, so how are they putting these two guys together? So it's clearly to me an overt kind of setup, or we got to get rid of Schaefer or something.
Right. Well, yeah, it had to be a setup, right? Because it happened at night, and Schaefer was stabbed in the head and the neck. Right. And again, I'll go back to that pristine bloody handprint because it sounds like it's there on purpose. Because if it was somebody trying to get their balance, then it would have been smeared, right? Because you move, right? Especially if you're like pushing off with your weight because you're trying to keep your balance.
Right. Tom Creech, by the way,
maybe it's someone trying to frame the hand of death.
Right, it is suspicious. His death in jail is very suspicious.
Oh,
it's very questionable.
Well, shall we get started on Kenneth Mad Dog McKenna?
Yes, we should, but I just want to let Huggy Bear know that Creech almost got the execution chair this year. He's been on death row for like decades, and they're still trying to kill him for his murders. But yeah, let's talk about Mad Dog McKenna, because most people I've not heard his name.
Well, okay, so just to go back to the beginning, like a lot of these guys had a really problematic, troubling childhood. He was born in 1942 in the South Side of Chicago, and his mother was a prostitute, so he got sex ed pretty early, and it was more or less raised on the streets, and kind of fell in with the Irish Mafia that gave him his first job of running policy notes. And anybody who's unfamiliar with what policy notes are, it's sort of like the proto lottery. It's the lottery before the lottery. So from there, 1959, he moves to Florida, takes up pimping. He's well known for child pornography and snuff film distribution. And one of his videos features and I guess it's an anaconda snake eating a child alive. Now, I just want to stress, no anaconda in nature has ever eaten a human being. But an anaconda in captivity who's being starved will eat a human being, because every animal and human being on this planet possesses something called self-preservation. And a snake can't tell the difference between a deer and a human being at that point if it's starving. So we go through all of that, and we get to him in jail, right? That's sort of a brief. I should say that's a brief background on Kenneth Mad Dog McKenna. And 1973, he was already part of the Hand of Death, but he was actually promoted to the fourth Prince of Hell. And it's interesting because it seems like, William, this Hand of Death has sort of a mafia military structure, like with lieutenants and privates and so forth. And basically what a fourth Prince of Hell gives him authority over the 3 associated codes or affiliated cults in Florida. Broward County. I think that is Snake Island in Broward County. No Keys in Monroe County. And Green Swamp in Polk County, Florida, in 1973. Obviously, at the point where Henry Lee Lucas and Otis Toole joins, there may be a situation where Jacksonville was added to like the affiliated cults in Florida. Of course, in his conversations with Schaefer, which we remember, we were talking about a serial killer talking to another serial killer. Let's take it with a big grain of salt here. He talks about his relationship with Ted Bundy. And he says, Ted Bundy's, according to Fatal Vision's Starbright, the interview he did with William Schaefer, Bundy seeked out Kenneth Mad Dog McKenna in 1973. I guess the reasoning being he was afraid, without the help of metaphysical forces, that his capture was inevitable. And he just talks about how it's interesting because Kenneth Mad Dog McKenna talks about how he agreed to teach him some of this stuff, the occult and Satanism, and how he thought Kenneth Mad Dog McKenna at first thought he would be a good recruit for the Hand of Death, which is sort of interesting within itself, because if he has the power to recruit people as a fourth Prince of Hell, that may be an indication that Don Metric, the person who recruited Henry Lee Lucas, was also a fourth Prince of Hell. Just something to think about.
It's Metric, Meterich, right?
Metric. I always call him Metric. I guess that's a
close.
TV character.
It's because it's close.
Yeah.
Right. So there's weird, just weird things about Bundy, and the fact that Bundy got away with so many things, like the apprehension, and his fact that he got out of jail too, is a kind of
twice.
Yeah, pretty sus. Like when you see some of these other guys get out of jail, like Manson or Donald DeFreeze or things like that in California, sometimes you wonder, like, how did these guys get out? How are they getting out?
Well, Mike Manson, Henry Lee Lucas, who was a member of the Hand of Death. This whole Hand of Death thing really got started with him talking.
Talking right.
They both, Manson begged to stay in prison, from what I understand, and so did Lucas. Lucas says, all I do is think about killing, right? And he begged them not to release him from the mental hospital, Ionia State Mental Hospital.
Right, there you go, Ionia. That's right. Like, there's like weird overties with kind of programmed mind control stuff too.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, we can go into that. Heidnik was a perfect example of a serial killer who came out, or even Kaczynski, really, because he was also tampered with these psych doctors.
It's just like, what kind of monster you want to make?
Yeah, really. And I mean, we can go into, I mean, this kind of overlaps. That's the whole thing, is like even Dahmer has weird connections to the process. So, and the process is much like the Hand of Death. It's so-called levels and tiers. Once you get into how the process really worked, you realize how sophisticated, ornate, and hierarchical it is. So it wouldn't be surprising that some of these satanic cults are the same way.
Yeah, exactly. What's interesting, according to Criminology Australia, Kenneth Mad Dog McKenna introduced Ted Bundy to the Church of Process. Now, this is 1973. If I'm not mistaken, the Process Church of the Final Judgment is going through somewhat of a schism. The guys who like Satan versus the guys who want to kind of go to and do the traditional Christian thing, more or less.
Gotcha. So that was at that time, but this is right when the process was really influential, right? I mean, after late 60s.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't say at 73 they were influential, because they were losing steam at that point. If you're dealing with like a schism, right, within the group, and at this point, I think that the writing was on the wall that Marianne McLean was probably going to get a divorce from Robert de Grimston. Yeah. But here's another interesting thing. If you believe Maury Terry, in Maury Terry's book, The Ultimate Evil, he talks about Jesse Turner and how Jesse Turner witnessed the Process Church like murdering somebody. And I believe the date he gave that on that, because he was living with the Process members, was 73.
Oh, interesting.
So the question then is, if Kenneth Mad Dog McKenna is a fourth prince of hell and has authority over the 3 affiliated cults in Florida, is it really 4? Is the Process Church an affiliated cult?
Right.
He goes out of his way to introduce Ted Bundy to the Church of Process. Is that something worth speculating? Asking the question and pulling the thread? To me,
I think it's a good. Yeah, it's a good question, Todd, because I just read this book about a guy who went in and talked to Berkowitz, right, and had a relationship with him. I think it was Mind of Madness or something like that. And Berkowitz said he was kind of in a feeder group to the process. He was called the Children, and they weren't really. They became closer to the process, but that's the way it works. Like, these guys overlap, and I mean, we can go back to Crowley, who was just on the cover of this book right here, Raising Hell. But Crowley was the same thing. Like, he would join every satanic group, and I think Creech was affiliated or connected to the OTO.
Well, to get to that, let's dig into Creech a little, because I have a speculation and I have a theory, because I don't think you'd be able to teach Ted Bundy in 3 days Satanism. So I'm going to jump a little forward, then I'm going to go back, if that's okay.
Go for it.
Okay, we're going to talk about Molly von Heydrich. Now, I don't know if she's related to the Nazi. I couldn't find anything. There's very little information about the young lady on the internet, other than she's possibly from South Africa. And she was, I guess, considered an explorer of some sort, and she wrote books. Basically, while Kenneth Mad Dog McKenna was in prison, this woman, Molly von Heydrich, contacts Kenneth Mad Dog McKenna, and asks for, I guess, wants to make a deal, right? In exchange for the map to Ted Bundy's cave, right? The place where supposedly he murdered and tortured his victims. One of those victims being Donegal Manson. Kenneth Mad Dog McKenna would be famous. He'd be rich. They'd be able to make a TV series and have a book. And Kenneth Mad Dog McKenna being basically, to quote Schaefer, one of the most honest men in prison, basically tells Molly Von Heydrich that he had a problem, that he would go to Washington State as a serial killer. And he killed about 52 people, hitchhikers, homeless people, prostitutes, what they would call the non-dead, because the reason why they kill them is because no one's going to miss them, right? So this raises an interesting question. I'm going back now. If Kenneth Mad Dog McKenna was going to Seattle, Washington, the question then is, when? Right? So according to Kenneth Mad Dog McKenna, he gives Molly 52 names. She researches the names and checks the names. Turns out these are real murder victims. She freaks out, backs out of the deal. Next thing you know, Molly Von Heydrich is dead. According to Kenneth Mad Dog McKenna, a couple of his friends, I guess from the Hand of Death or perhaps an affiliated group, paid her a visit, and she is no more. Bye-bye, Miss Heydrich. But what I'm getting at here is, if Kenneth Mad Dog McKenna was teaching Ted Bundy Satanism and he was going to Seattle, is it possible that the cult activity was really just another chapter of the Hand of Death in Washington State? What do you think?
I don't know.
William?
I think it's a good question. I mean, wasn't there something in George of Cavdeff's research where there were other people saying Ted Bundy showed up at satanic meetings and stuff like that?
Right. That's from file 1004, I think.
Right. Can you explain what 1004 is for people who don't know?
1004 was the file that the Seattle police were keeping on occult crimes that were happening in Washington State.
And it was kind of a detail. I think it's 400 pages. Like, it's not like 2 pages or something. It's like
it's a big old file. It take me a couple of days to get through it.
Yeah. So it was done by a police detective, so it was legit, but it wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't acted on by the authorities, or it didn't seem to get integrated into any police prosecutions or anything like that, if I remember correctly.
Right. So there's this connection between the Hand of Death and what's going on in Seattle through Kenneth Mad Dog McKenna and Ted Bundy. Of course, other people like Stanley Benson claims that they were killing with Ted Bundy. Stanley Benson himself is a Satanist. Thomas Creech, we were just talking about. He's the one who we have a lot of information about this cult from him, his testimony. But we also need to look at Thomas Creech. Again, there's that hitman element to Thomas Creech. Just like I said earlier, just like Henry Lee Lucas, Otis Toole, and Kenneth Mad Dog McKenna.
Right. They're right. It's really something else. And Creech was like a cold-blooded killer. Like, he wouldn't.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he was a bad guy.
Really bad.
All of them are bad guys, but I definitely don't want to meet Thomas Creech.
Yeah, you would never want to meet him in any, or Otis Toole or any of these other characters in any way, shape, or form. Like, just casually, because he would casually kill like rando people. Like, I think he got picked up for a hitchhiking and just killed 2 guys just for fun. Like, it was just like nothing.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Right.
Let me see if I can find a picture of him, because like, if you saw Creech, you would just be like, oh, he looks like
he's connected. Well, I mean, there's a mafia element to the Hand of Death, right? And its tentacles like spread throughout the United States. Thomas Creech is connected to Peter Simon, one of the bigger hotel owners in Vegas at the time.
Wow.
Yeah.
There's Creech. He
And I
looks like
think
a hippie, long hair.
yeah, he was actually, if I'm not mistaken, I think he was in San Francisco in '68.
Yeah, no, he was there very early, 66 or 68. Like he
Yeah,
was
he
in the
would have been there the same time or close to the same time as Ted Bundy when he was attending Stanford.
Yeah, no, crazy. Jolly and West, all the characters, right? Mike
Yeah,
Manson,
and a little
Anger,
7 by 7 mile box.
right? And even closer than that, really. They were very close. I think that the Hells Angels were very, this guy was active with the Hells Angels too, who were very nasty outfit at that time.
And of course, he talks in that article, the All-American Death Angel, he talks about the Brotherhood, who are like elite motorcyclist, biker gang people. And that's interesting because I think it was Squeaky Fraun who also references this group, the Brotherhood.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
But they all kind of write, like the Kool-Aid acid test involves like a gang rape scene of the Hells Angels. So this guy's around there. Jolly and West is studying the hippies, studying the drug culture right there at the Haight-Ashbury Clinic, like literally had a house there, a safe house or something. And then Hunter
On
S. Thompson.
Frederick Davis Street.
Yeah, Hunter S. Thompson's literally right off the Haight, like 2 or 3 blocks.
Right. The Process Church is less than a half a mile from Manson.
I think they were very close to some other, but I think they were in the Haight somewhere. I think they're
on Colt Street.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, so it's a very, I mean, to add this guy to the mix is really something else of all those guys. Bouzoulet, Anger, all around.
Yeah.
So you have another.
And then 6 miles away
killer.
from them is the Church of Satan.
Right. Mm-hmm. Which this guy knows LaVey, right? So you can tie 2 killers to LaVey. This guy, Creech, and Richard Ramirez, right? Because I think Ramirez in the Corso book, Ramirez met LaVey. So.
And Susan Atkins.
Well said, right? So it's all there. It's incredible. Like he's like tied to full on like hardcore killers, yeah.
Right. But to get back to like Kenneth Mad Dog McKenna, you know, just to like he calls Ted Bundy an insincere student. I guess Ted Bundy went his own way. According to that article that he did with Schaefer. But that's really interesting. A question that I would have, especially with those 52 women, is, you know, some of the stuff, you know, Rodney Alcala, the dating game killer, his storage unit was in Seattle, Washington.
Wow.
Is it maybe some of the victims that Rodney, like, I was thinking, like, okay, maybe it's a situation where, like, where some of Mad Dog's crimes are being pinned on other killers. Right? Because I'm just thinking back to like the epilogue of Weird Scenes from Inside Laurel Canyon where he's talking about Rodney Alcala. You know? And then there's like the Green River Killer. Is there a possible connection between those two guys and Kenneth Mad Dog McKenna? I mean, there's no proof of it, but it's worth speculating.
That's what's weird. Like these guys know each other and they overlap. And so they have to know they're in kind of like a weird group of people who like to kill people. This, I don't know if you caught this, but they had a Heuermann press conference the other day. And
they did.
Yeah, no, it's something else. We could do a show on that. But they're saying that like the family probably knew and he was reading books by Thompson, right? What's the John Douglas? Heuermann was reading books on John Douglas, the FBI profiler. So he was. Oh, really? He was more sophisticated. So that's kind of in the court document. So yeah, Huggy Bear, the conference was authorized. It really was. It was the most astonishing press conference I have ever seen, ever. Like it was like yes, I was just we're just gonna have a press conference. This guys, I was like. Wow, it was literally True Detective level. Heuermann.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, no, there's much more to that story because he was like these guys moving around, traveling to different states like Bundy. He's like got connections to Vegas. South or North Carolina, Long Beach, Manhattan,
Yeah.
New Jersey,
Mm-hmm.
and some of the affidavits and stuff that came out. And, the stuff that he was liking online that they caught that weren't kind of expunged were like, oh, dude, you can talk offline.
Okay.
I can't talk about it right now, but I have a really big show coming up on Monday, people. So I guess I could announce it now. I'm going to have the attorney who conducted the press conference on my show.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So his name is John Ray, R-A-Y. So we're going to go over everything. So
that's great.
It'll be Monday at 5:30 Eastern. So I have them in my calendar. And if people want to pre-show and watch that, yeah, you should watch it. You'd be very interested.
I'll watch it. You're starting exactly when I'm getting off of work, so I may have to wait till it's done to watch it. I'll watch the whole thing.
Yeah, no, it's good. I did a show on Heuermann, so I read the original affidavit on Heuermann, but there's been many other court filings. They actually had a Heuermann. They added 2 additional victims, and one of the strange things that you'll see if you watch this press conference is they found hairs from, I think, his daughter, if I remember correctly, in one of these back. He used these certain bags, like what kind of fabric it was. But he was a hunter. Heuermann was definitely a hunter. He loved guns, and he went to hunting clubs. And the victims were in these hunting bags. Bro, it is so incredible. Yeah, so maybe I can pull it up. Let me see if I can pull up this press conference.
Well, while you're pulling that up, I'm going to keep talking about Kenneth Mad Dog McKenna and how the interesting thing is it seems like he's kind of a made man in the hand of death because the South Americans actually in 1982 ended up hiring him for a contract hit to take out Cesar Vittel and his wife, Patty, as well as Mike Papa and his wife. Now, the interesting thing is, for those who don't know, Mike Papa is connected to the Lughese crime family. His uncle is Vinny Papa. Vinny Papa is thought to be the mastermind of the $70 million heroin heist, The French Connection, which they turned into a movie with Gene Hackman. And it got busted up in like 1969 on the eastern coast of the United States. Now, Cesar Vittel is connected to the Colombo crime family. And what these two guys did is they ripped off the South American cartels for about $1 million worth of cocaine. Excuse me. So they hired Kenneth Mad Dog McKenna to go and take these guys out. Of course, Cesar Vittel is pretty easy. He lived in Florida or had a house in Florida. But then he had to go to New York, and I guess the South American cartel, thought that Mike Papa could pay back the money because of his connections to the Lughese crime syndicate. But one thing led to another, and Kenneth Mad Dog McKenna ended up having to kill Mike Papa as well. It was a big story, and that happened in 1982. Did you find it, William?
Yeah, I got it right there. This is it. This is the original. I'll put a link to this. People can watch it, but I'm talking to this guy. His name is John Ray, R-A-Y. But this press conference will blow your mind. It is True Detective in real life. I mean,
yeah,
I could go over it. 2 additional victims growing up, book on the table about BDSM, literally wearing a right-wing death mask like freaking what is it? Global Death Cult, like this group that I study. It's so off the charts. You cannot make this stuff up. I got to show you this picture. You blow your mind, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's a whole nother show, but yeah, this is the original. So this is the original press conference. I'll put a link to it. The title is, for people listening in audio, is Press Conference: Surprising Evidence on Rex Heuermann Family and Serial Killer Case.
You know what's interesting about that guy is like he's connected to the aerospace stuff, like through his uncle. Yeah, his uncle, I guess, was worked on satellites for like NASA and stuff like that.
Wow.
According to him, in the interview he did with that guy, that really awkward dude in New York City. I don't know if you watched that. It's actually at Lowfield in Love, at programtokill.net. But
this is a remarkable
Yeah.
because this guy on the left, so this is the attorney, but this guy
Yeah.
on his right, I think it's Bricado. He's a pretty well-known kind of criminal profiler. I've seen him make the rounds on TV, and he does have a YouTube channel. But he's a pretty well-respected academic, is my understanding. But he's joining this press conference, and it's taking place across the street from. This is the lawyer's legal help. Her name is Lena, and then these are the pictures. I don't know if you can see these, but it's literally like carving up bodies. But one of these well, I don't want to give it away. I'll give it away.
Yeah. Save stuff for Monday.
I'll save it for the Monday. But I mean, this is.
If you have a chance, watch that interview.
Yeah,
this is his little section.
Yeah, Adam Walker.
Because the interviewer does all this, like he's like has this nervous laugh. It's kind of it's uncomfortable. Like the interview is like really uncomfortable.
Which are you talking about?
It's this guy. I guess he has like his own YouTube channel or something, and he interviews Rex, and he's foreign.
Oh yeah, no, no,
yeah, and he has this like little nervous laugh.
Yeah. No, I actually have. I can show that. I can actually bring that up because they just profiled that on another show just the other day. Let me see.
Yeah, that's where he talks about his uncle helping make satellites.
Oh wow.
Yeah. Like I want to do a special Killafornia episode where it's like serial killer connections to aerospace. And that's like one of the things I want to talk about.
Wow. Okay. Well, there's another one on News Nation where they show that interview you're talking about Heuermann.
Yeah.
But Heuermann was he was involved in the BDSM community. There's like a notorious place that down in Manhattan called Pandora's Box. And he would stay up late and do coke and like crazy stuff. But if you see this picture here, they didn't notice it in the press conference, but unfortunately, I've done a lot of like research on the occult far right. That's clearly like a skull mask that Adam Waffen or some of these other guys carry,
right?
The Order of Nine Angles, and this is like totally where this is from. But like this one, cutting up bodies. This is like straight out. This is from these are all likes, I think, of the daughter. You can't even believe this. These are likes that they caught online that the daughter liked, and then Rex came in and liked them as well.
Oh my God.
Yeah. This is straight out of Witchcraft and Eyes Wide Shut. It's the opening scene of Eyes Wide Shut. Yeah, no, this is like incredible. You cannot believe this stuff. This is like the tip of the iceberg. This guy, forgot this guy's name.
I hate Eyes Wide Shut. I cannot stand.
No, it's not Eyes Wide Shut. It's True Detective. Excuse me.
True Detective.
I'm trying to do like 4 things at once. I'm not doing it.
Oh, that's okay.
Anyway,
how much time do we have left?
How much time do you need? 15 minutes? What's up? We're at the 40.
Oh no, I was just wondering. Have we hit the 40-minute mark? Did you want to read some of the that from Raising Hell?
I don't think we need to. Do you have anything you want to add? I mean, let's see. Let me.
I mean, that it's just anybody who's interested in this subject, take a look at Kenneth Mad Dog McKenna. I guarantee you'll be left with more questions than answers.
One of the interesting thing that made me think of like these kind of overlap between the occultists and mob hits is also the killing of LaBianca, right? Wasn't he involved in? Yeah. Like it's a totally a so-called random kill, that's what they tell the public, but it was probably, I would think, a targeted hit. Like, you got to run this guy out. We'll give you some money. They're like, okay,
right.
People all the time.
For sure. I mean, of course, according to one book about the RFK murders, they believe in that book they speculate or put forth the theory that that the Tate LaBianca murders were hits.
Wow. So they were supposed to there was all kinds of weird drug things going on with Frykowski. Like, I think there was a ton of drugs and weird stuff going on at that.
Yeah. Was it? It's not ecstasy. It's MDA.
MDA.
Is that it? Is that the name of the drug?
I think so. I think Frykowski was kind of there. And my understanding is maybe I think they thought that Sharon Tate wasn't going to be there. That's what I heard. I mean,
right. Well, again, they were supposed to have a party that night, but they got a bad batch of drugs, so they couldn't do the party. In fact, you know who else was supposed to be there was Richard Alcala and Sharon Tate's one of her best friends, Clara White, a Playboy playmate from 1963. And of course, Richard Alcala is a hairdresser whose cousin is Rodney Alcala.
Wow.
And Richard's father is Bobby Bucor Alcala, the famous aerial cinematographer who would like skydive and like get shots for movies like Exteriors. And he had to do a shot twice, and he died on the second one during the film Don't Make Waves. Thank you, Professor Henry Horn.
Yeah, I've interviewed Henry Horn too. I was kind of looking up his stuff today. It's Stone's Unturned podcast.
Good
if anybody
stuff.
has any questions, feel free to write them.
Check that out too.
Yeah. Yeah, Monday should be very interesting. I'm interviewing this guy, John Ray.
Oh, I'm going to be watching that. Would you mind sending me the link?
Of course. There's other information that they didn't have in the press conference. So there's, I didn't reveal everything, but I'm also interviewing Chris Knowles about his new book on synchro mysticism. So those will be Monday, if anybody has time. So that should be a good interview day. I just ask anybody questions or anything you'd like to finish. Why don't you promote where you can find your other material?
Well, I do a show called Killafornia once a month on the Walter Bosley channel. Feel free to come check it out. Well, it's all about having fun. We're not scholars of this material. We're just two guys having a beer, chatting it up, just like William and I are right now. So,
yeah, it's great stuff. So tell me the other subjects you've covered. You've covered 4-Pi. You've covered
4-Pi, who may be connected to the Hands of Death. For all we know, 4-Pi may just have transformed into the Hands of Death. In fact, before I forget, I did forget, but I just remembered. I want to put forth the speculation that William Mincer and Laney Jacobs are connected to the Hand of Death through the South American cartels. If you are familiar, supposedly William Mincer is Manson II, the person who orchestrated the murder of Arliss Perry, and also one of the hitmen who killed Roy Raiden, who is connected to the Son of Sam cult in Long Island, New York.
And both of those murders happened in California. One was in Southern California.
Right. And yeah, so William Bill Mincer is a hitman. Right. And supposedly, now here's another interesting thing. If you look into that book, Raising Hell, The Hand of Death, Raising Hell, The Encyclopedia of Satanic Crime, William Mincer is a part of this thing called the Black Cross, which sounds exactly like the Hand of Death, a murder for hire with a satanic slant to it.
Right. You need to have that kind of evil mind to do that stuff. That's the whole
thing.
So you have to be, even the mob has initiations and blood rituals. Like if you're made, if you're made,
right.
Pick your finger and burn it and burn something.
Right. I mean, it's all cultural too, especially with like the Hand of Death. Because the occult is so big in South America, and at the time you had the Iran Contra stuff happening, and that's connected too. Just the way that Reagan and Bush viewed the loss of Nicaragua and El Salvador was the way that they viewed the loss of Cuba, and they were just so determined not to get it back, right? So they started training the South American expats who were like the death squads, who were monsters, absolute monsters. And then Henry Lee Lucas claims in the Everglades, that's who was training him. Was the CIA?
It's totally believable.
El Salvadorian death squad
it's totally believable, Todd. Those guys would go out on hunting death squads at night. Like, hey, guys, it's time to go out. All right, let's have a couple beers. And they go to somebody's house and just murder everybody. And then
Right. They were crucifying people.
Oh, the stories that are real. I can't remember who it was. It was somebody who went down there and like inadvertently ran into these death squads, and they were usually the victims were indigenous, so they went after kind of like what we would
and the funny that the El Salvador of today is not the El Salvador of yesterday. They've cleaned up their act a whole bunch. Their economy is doing good.
Here's the interesting thing is that this kind of South American connection is real, because even Henry Lee Lucas said he would go to the border and there were like cults down there that overlap with what we know of Adolfo, right? Costanza was it Jesus?
Matamoros, right?
Yeah, Matamoros.
And if you talk about Matamoros, you got to talk about Magdalena Solis, the high priestess of blood, her cult that got busted up in '63. Because she lived right beneath Matamoros in the same area,
vicinity, same kind of area.
Yeah.
But do you know why Adolfo Costanza went to the border? Do you know why he did that? It wasn't just because of drugs; it's because he knew that's where all the Satanists hung out. So he just went there to join all the rest of them. They're called narco.
And I think he's connected to the Chicago Mafia, isn't he? Like the drug network, he was selling drugs to the Chicago mob.
I think
who were like marking them up and selling them again.
They had this woman, I think they called her the Madrone or Matron or something, but she was from the States. Like she was from the border town before they and the whole. Yeah, she was from Brownsville, and they found like blood in her house and stuff. Like she wasn't telling the full story, but when they got the guy. It's much like a smiley face killing thing, because they went after the gringo in Matamoros or the Brown, whatever it was. But it was like late at night after the bars were closed. He got separated from his fence and disappeared. It's exactly.
Oh, you're talking about Mark Kilroy.
Kilroy, thank you.
Yeah. Hey, William, I really have to use the restroom.
Let's wrap it up. People check out Todd Wood's stuff on Killafornia. And thank you all for listening. And check out the show on Monday.
Yeah, and anybody who's interested in this subject, great place to start doing research is Lowfield and Love on YouTube and programtokill.net. Shout out to Patrick.
Yeah, Patrick, George too. I was reading through George's of CavDev today.
And Jimmy from Program to Chill, and Professor Henry Horn, the Stones Unturned podcast. Fantastic stuff.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Todd. Appreciate your time. Thanks everybody for listening. Appreciate it.